Hello everyone. So today I'm going to be guiding you through the client component of the AuditSafe 21 CFR GMP-compliant software from Total Lab. So today I'm going to be guiding you through the client component of our AuditSafe 21 CFR GMP-compliant software. Now if you've seen my previous video that went through kind of the server component, the kind of the config, the admin side of this software, the client component is what the typical lab users are going to be using day in, day out. So this is what they're going to be interacting with, not kind of the behind the scenes setup of it all. So the client app is quite simple. When you open it, it's going to ask you to log in. You can log in using a username and password combination that's specific to the AuditSafe software that is defined within the server component, or you can use Windows Active Directory via LDAP to use your Windows credentials to log into the software as well. So I'm just going to come through and put in my test username, and you can see that when you type in your password, it is obscured, as is kind of standard practice when entering passwords online, that kind of thing. So we do have a layer of security built in here, so if someone's standing nearby and look over your shoulder, they can't just see your password in plain text, although we do have the option to reveal it here if you're struggling to kind of spell your password correctly or something like that, just to check. If I come down here to the three-dot menu, I've got the option to change my password, at which point the user is asked to type in their old password and double type their new password. Again, pretty standard from kind of web interfaces used all across the internet. And then I've also got the options to perform an emergency login, which I'm not going to go into on this video, but it gives you access to emergency login functions and the ability to switch user if I don't want to log in as this test user and I want to log in as someone else. So if I come through to login, when you do log in, you're greeted with this screen, which there isn't a whole lot of information in because I don't have a project active that I'm wanting to work on. Within this screen, I've got, if I come down to the bottom right here, if I click my username, I'll just be logged out straight away. So that's where the logout function is. If I come to the little burger menu here, you can see I've already got a project in my list. I can filter my projects by some default states that they might be in. So are they locked? Are they in a state where they are requiring sign off? Or I can view all projects. I can search for my projects, and this list updates as you fill in project names and type. So again, if I type something that isn't a project, it's not going to show up. But if I type in T, it's going to bring up, or if I type in TES, it's going to bring up test, which is the only project that I've got in the system. And we can refresh the project list in case you've got 100 of these client apps on 100 different computers all around the lab. Someone may push a project and you just need to refresh your project list to grab that new project information on your copy of the client. So as I touched upon there, you can have many clients, hundreds, all connecting to a single server component, and it's what gives us the ability to have kind of centralized project lists, audit trails, that kind of thing on the server component, which I went into in my previous video. The two buttons we've got here allow us to create a new project or create an empty project. Now, creating a new project, this is designed for when you already have the data that you want to bring into the system. You already have the data that you want to analyze, you want to import it and then do some work on it in a fully tracked and compliant environment. The new empty project function allows you to create all of the kind of the scaffolding and the folder structure within AuditSafe without having the data already that you want to analyze. So the use case for this would be if I were to create a new empty project, I could then bring in data as it's created from a piece of equipment, say if it's a LAN or a wireless based piece of equipment and I want it's constantly generating data and I want to bring it into the system but I don't have it yet to import. If I create a new empty project and I give that piece of equipment the location of the folder that's created when making an empty project and tell it to dump its data in there, you can have a fully tracked environment, a full audit history from the second that data was created on the piece of equipment. Again, with all of Total Labs software, we are open to all vendors, all manufacturers. So if your piece of equipment has the ability for you to define where the data should be saved when it's created, you can use the new empty project to have an end-to-end audit trail from the moment the data was created through to analysis, all the way through to PDF report at the end, if supported by the analysis software. So that's a hugely flexible option for projects that rely on gathering data over time or not having the data ahead of time. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a new project, and I'll just call it test 2. I can include any notes that I want to append with my project. So if I had a particular sample number or a particular antibody batch number that was used, a particular reagent history that I wanted to include and carry along with this project, I could enter it here. And here is where I will drop the data files for analysis. So I can add in singular files, or I can add in a folder of files. So if I just come across and browse and open up a standard Windows Explorer, I'll just grab one of these images here. So you can see I've just imported a pretty standard TIFF image here. And then if I click on New Project, the project will be created and we'll start building up our audit trail from there. Give it a second to upload the files that I've added. So you can see here it's created my project test 2, which has been added to my projects list here, and it's created revision 1, the time and date here, and it started to build up the audit trail, the history of the project, with the first action being it has been created by user test on this date at this time. Now I've got 3 options here. I can check out a copy of the project. So projects are, when they're not being used, when they're not being worked on, they're stored in what we call a secure folder. Now the secure folder is exactly what it sounds like. Think of it like a bank vault. It's where your data is held in an immutable state and nothing can happen to it. And if you want to perform any work, any analysis, or change any of the data held within that secure folder, you have to check out a copy. So imagine it like checking a book out from the library, or going to a safe deposit box and opening the contents like they do in the movies. When you click check out a copy of that data, so never the original data always stays in the secure folder in an immutable copy, again to comply with 21 CFR and GMP regulations. When you click check out, you take a temporary copy that is then worked on, and then you check it back in after you've performed your work, and it's added as a second revision next to the first revision within the secure folder. So the original always exists. No files are ever deleted within our 21 CFR solution within AuditSafe, but we always work on copies and check them in when we're happy with the work that we've finished. I've got the option to check out a non-editable copy. So this is like checking out a read-only copy of the file. This is particularly useful for doing things like sign-offs. So obviously, if I as an analyst had done a load of analysis work and I had checked my work back in and I wanted to send it for sign-off, I want to make sure that when the person is signing off the work that I have done, that is in my name on the audit trail, that they haven't changed anything and then signed it off, because those changes would look like they had come from my work. So I want to make sure that my work is represented accurately and faithfully. So, or if I wanted to show a project to someone but wanted to make sure that they couldn't change anything that I'd done in there, again, that's another use case for the checkout non-editable copy button. And again, as I touched on previously, request sign-off sends the project to a sign-off state, which means that it then sits there. I can't make any more changes to it until it goes to someone that has the sign-off permission, and they can decide. So this would be like a lab manager or a QC manager. They would decide if the project has been analyzed correctly, has been worked with correctly, and they can approve the sign-off request, or they can reject the sign-off request, and they can include notes to go along with that. So if they reject a sign-off, say this isn't good enough, or the quality of this image in this example or the data is not good enough for the analysis to be rigorous enough to be true, they can include that in the notes and it would go back to the analyst, so me in this instance. it would go back to them with those notes, and they would know why why a sign-off has been rejected. So what I'll do is, if I just click out checkout, the software will create that copy that I was talking about and save it locally on my computer. Now, when you check the project back in, kind of save your changes, the temporary copy that was saved on your computer to allow you to work on it is deleted afterwards. So we minimize the number of copies of this data going around. So there's only ever a copy in the secure folder or a temporary copy in your working folder when you're working on it. That's the only two locations that data goes to. So I've got our Forensics 1D software plugged into AuditSafe. Now, AuditSafe is compatible with a wide array of our software and software that we work with to make compliant from other vendors. So other people that want to be part of the AuditSafe system, that want to use the structure of the AuditSafe system to make their hardware and their software 21 CFR or GMP compliant, would also fit in here as well as what we call an integration within the platform. Depending on what software you've got integrated with AuditSafe changes the options that you've got here at the bottom. So the options that I've got here are to analyze within our Forensics 1D software, create a multiplex image, again a function that's limited to our software, the ability to view, so that would be to view the file that I've included, the TIFF file in this example, calibrate, again a Forensics 1D specific workflow to be able to calibrate the image that I've got using our Forensics 1D software. Apply calibration is just applying a calibration file that I've previously created using this tool. And inspect is very similar to view, just to inspect the data that forms this project. So I'll just go ahead and do like a little quick, have a little look and just show you how it would integrate with our software, with our Forensics 1D analysis software. So I'd click Analyze, and it would launch the copy of Forensics 1D that I have on my local computer. Again, this would be the client computer on the within the site, within the lab. So it would do all of the license checking and launch the software. So what it's done here is launch our Forensics 1D software, the copy that I have on my client computer, and launch it with the image file that I've included in my project. Now, I've not got the option to save this image anywhere outside of the AuditSafe software. It lives within the software. So we don't have to worry about it leaving the environment through being saved as. So we've kind of closed the ability for users to do that. So if I just come through, now again, I'm using our software, but by no means is AuditSafe limited to our software. Like I said, we have partnerships with other companies that want to use AuditSafe as the foundation for their own analysis software. So I can come through and I can do, I can do my analysis, whatever that may be. I'm just going to come through and quickly do this. Detect some lanes. It's probably not going to work very well because it's such a dark image, because I've not got. There we go. That'll do for now. Add in some of our background and basically start performing an analysis. Again, I'm doing this super quick. This is not meant to be a reflection of how to analyze projects in Forensics 1D. This is how you would handle data within the AuditSafe system. So, I've come through, I've got my bands, I've got my analysis. I'm happy. I, as the analyst, have done my work, and now I'm ready to send it for sign off or put it back into the AuditSafe system. So I'll close this down, save my changes. And now I've got two options. I can commit the changes that I've made. I can commit the analysis to the secure folder, or I can return it with basically discard any changes. So I'll commit. Again, I get the opportunity to add any notes. So if within my image data, I was like, oh, lanes 3 and 4 seem to be overexposed, or there's a fingerprint in the bottom right corner, something like that, I can highlight any of that to go along with the project. So this would all be part of the report that comes out at the end. So if in 10, 20 years time someone came back to look at the analysis that was done, all of this information is still there as part of the project, so it can be taken into account. You can see that here the notes are required. That's from the options set up on the server component that I mentioned on my other video. So if I commit the revision and have that all of that information saved into the secure folder, you can see now that the software has moved me to revision 2. Because I've done some work, I've added basically a second version of the information to the secure folder. So now I've got my revision 1 and my revision 2. And if I wanted to continue working on it, I would continue the process of checking out, checking in, checking out, checking in. If I had, 10 revisions of this project, and I wanted to see how the project analysis had changed over time, what the starting state of the project or the data was, how that analysis has changed over time, what I can do is I can go back to my revision 1, and now you can see I don't have the option to check this version out and create and perform an analysis, but I do have the option to check out a non-editable version, so a read-only version. So I can view what the data was like at this point, but I can't change it because the changes should always be made on the latest revision. That way we only have kind of a linear pathway of how the data has changed over time rather than creating branches of data, because we don't want multiple copies of the same data all existing at the same time to remain compliant. So I've still got the option of being able to view what my project started off at. I can still view all of the audit trails, so you can see I committed it then, I created the project, I checked out the project, I launched Forensics 1D Analyze, and then I performed my work, and then it took me like 3 minutes, so I've got my timestamp here, my username here, I committed it, and then we started revision 2. Now, each revision has its own audit trail on the right hand side, but if I were to export the project file, so if I click here, I can see the full project history. So even if I had 10 different revisions of this project, I'd be able to see everything that happened from revision 1 to revision 10 within this list. So we do have all of that information for exporting in PDF format for when you want to, submit information to auditors or submit information to the FDA. That is all together. However, when you're viewing a revision of a project, you only see the section of the project history that is relevant to that revision. It just makes the interface a lot cleaner for the users. We do have the ability to include attachments with the project. So if I click on attachments, you can see that we've got the option to amend attachments to a revision of a project or to the project itself. So these are basically additional files, so I can just browse and it will open, a window, and I can drag files in. Attachments can be any type of file, but they are useful for adding supplementary information to either a revision of a project or the project itself. So as I mentioned in the beginning, you might want to include reagent information, for example, or you may want to include, if your site has written SOPs, you might want to include the SOP that was used for analysis, and that might change for each revision as your analysis changes. If you've got lots of different pieces of software plugged into the AuditSafe software, you may have an SOP for one stage of analysis here, an SOP for another stage of analysis in revision 2, or you might want to include reagent information here, say purity testing certificate information for the reagents that you used, something like that, or antibody batch number again, antibody information, something like that, pertinent information that adds context to your analysis and to your project and to the data that you've got and where you've kind of made your assumptions from. So you can include that in the project if it's going to make sense to every revision within the project, or you can add it to a specific revision if it mainly or only applies to that specific revision's unit of work. So once I've performed all of that, I can then send this project to request sign off. So I can say, please sign off, analyzed per SOP 1.1, and then that will essentially kind of lock the project from my end. So you see, I can't check out a copy of this data to work on anymore because it's in this sign-off state. So when someone with a permission to sign off project logs into the AuditSafe software, they will have a notification saying that there is a project awaiting sign off, and then they will choose whether to sign off the project or reject the project. I can cancel my sign off request if I suddenly remember, oh God, I've forgotten to do something with this project. I can cancel it and rescind that request, or I can wait for it to be signed off or the sign off to be rejected. If I cancel a request, I just can put in, whoops, forgot something. Click OK. So all these notes you can see get added to the audit trail. So acts as a running commentary of the project and what's happened with the project, and adds context to the buttons and the options that you've pressed here. Another option that I've got, if I've got the permissions enabled, is the ability to lock a project. Now, locking a project does require you to enter your password, and so does sign off as well. So even if someone logs in with the permission to sign off projects and then walks away from their computer, if someone else logged in as them, if someone else came and used their computer pretending to be them, logged in as them, they would still need to know the user's password. So that's another layer of security that we've got to make sure that people with the correct permissions are performing the correct actions, so that the audit trail is true, is representative of the people that have sat behind the keyboard and have performed those actions. So if I just lock this project, the lock function is designed to be used when a project is finished and you shouldn't be making any more changes. It's done. You've performed your analysis. You've got your results. You've exported your report. This project is done. Now, as I mentioned, you can't delete projects from AuditSafe. You can't delete it. But what you may want to do is be able to segregate completed projects from projects that are being actively worked on. That's what the lock function is designed to do. And you can filter this list, filter your projects list to not show you locked projects. So whilst you've still got access to all of that data, you don't see it, you don't end up with an incredibly heavily populated project list. If I want to unlock the project again, type in my password, I can gain access to the project again. So that would be a whistle-stop tour of kind of how analysts would use the client side of the software in a day-to-day basis to perform their analysis and have their full audit trail with electronic signatures accompanying it. Again, a very quick kind of run through of all of the options that are available to you within using the AuditSafe software to generate data and analysis reports that are compliant with 21 CFR and GMP regulations, and all of the kind of guards that we've put in place to make this software as secure and to make your audit trail as rigorous and secure as possible. As ever, thanks for watching, and if you'd be interested in trialing out a copy of the AuditSafe 21 CFR GMP compliance software, or you've got any advanced 21 CFR or GMP compliant needs, please check out the links in the description below.